Hello, happy Martin Luther King Day to all of you out there. I may be the only schmuck at work today. So I decided to shoot out a video. Actually, I've been getting a lot of emails from people saying we like the blog and we like you typing, but once in a while we want to see your face on screen. They're crazy. But now that I'm here, I want to discuss two important things with you, because over the past few months, I'd say, for some reason there's been an uptick in the amount of real estate closings, not only that we've been doing, but a lot of my colleagues have been doing. Sometimes it's because of end-of-year bonuses, people receive money, and so they want to put down payments on homes. Now, a lot of what we do is new construction in New York City and in Brooklyn. And in those two areas, there's two vital places we look to in the contract to make sure that our clients are actually protected. In plain English, there's two things you really need to look out for, and whoever you hire really needs to look out for. They are the mortgage contingency clause, and also a clause that we almost always put in called the drop-dead clause, and I love the name of that. It's so violent. The first clause is very important, the mortgage contingency clause. And the easiest way to explain it is the following. If you don't get a mortgage, you're out of the deal. So everyone's always worried about putting down, plunking down 10%. Let's say you're buying a new construction for $500,000. You have to put down $50,000 of your own cash. Another attorney is holding that money as a deposit in their escrow fund to be released at the closing. The problem is that $50K is not in your account anymore, and it's in someone else's account. And as much as I tell my clients that it's in an escrow, they're still worried about the seller or the sponsor, if it's a new construction, actually keeping the money. So how does this relate to actually getting a mortgage? Well, a mortgage contingency clause, what it should realistically say is, hey, if I, as the person applying for a mortgage, don't get a mortgage within X number of days, and typically we put 45 days from the time we receive a signed contract back from the sponsor, then if I notify you that I don't get this mortgage, I get to get my money back. See, the problem is, in the heyday of real estate, around 6-7 years ago, when people were just going crazy over things that weren't even built, half of Florida, they would plunk down money and forget about this mortgage contingency clause. They wouldn't care at all. So what you had was thousands, literally thousands of people losing enormous sums of money because they didn't have this one tiny clause that's in there. What you'll find sometimes are developers these days, because the market's gotten a little bit hotter with new construction, saying, no, we don't want this mortgage contingency clause. Or, more importantly, now you're seeing developers basically say, okay, no problem. You want to go to your bank? Go to your bank. But as a backstop, you have to also apply to our bank as well, because we're pretty sure that they're going to give you the same deal and they're going to approve you because they've worked with us. So no matter what you do, when you go into purchasing a new property anywhere in New York, you want to make sure, in fact, you have to make sure that there's a mortgage contingency clause. Otherwise, you're screwed. Literally, you're screwed. If things go wrong, if you don't get a mortgage, let's say, and you plunk down this money and there is no mortgage contingency clause, you're going to either lose your deposit or you're going to have to find that money somewhere else, which is not a good conversation to have with relatives if you're actually getting money from them for the purchase itself. So make sure that clause is actually there, and we always do in our contracts. And secondly, what's more and more popular and what we've been using basically is something called a drop-dead clause. It's one of the simplest terms to put out there, and it's not used enough. Sometimes developers hate it, but some developers will actually do it because they have to keep things moving. What is it? In the simplest sense, again, I'm saying as a purchaser, hey, sponsor, if you can't close on this deal by, February 12th, I get to back out, no questions asked. The reason people do this is the following. Sometimes in New York, you'll have to deal with the Department of Buildings, and sometimes that becomes a very, very slow process. So what typically happens is we apply for a mortgage, and we get a mortgage, and we want to close, and everything's ready to go, but for some reason the sponsor, the seller, doesn't have a sign-off from the Department of Buildings. They can't get their certificate of occupancy. In other words, we as the purchasers can't close, we can't live there yet. But we can't keep sitting there basically waiting because we have to pay our bank if we want to keep the low rate that we've actually got. So what do? We put the pressure on the sponsor and we say, hey, look, if you're serious about this and this isn't your first rodeo and you know what you're doing, then put in a drop-dead clause, or allow us to put in a drop-dead clause, which states that if we can't close by X, we get to keep our money, you get it back, you give it back to us, I should say, and we walk away from the deal. This isn't used as often as it should be, and it really is somewhat of a red flag if a developer doesn't want to say okay to this. Specifically, if the developer has actually done this before and they know that they can do this, some of them will hesitate, but a lot of my clients are asking for it these days. So, amongst about a gajillion other things that you want to look out for when you purchase real estate in New York. Those are the two most important clauses. In the next few weeks, we're going to be rolling out some new updates to the site, which include asking questions of us via video and video responses. So if you guys do want to ask a question, please send an email over and we'll be happy to answer you. Thank you again.